All right, let's dive into some more questions. So I have two here, and when I started thinking about one, I decided that I was going to answer them together. So just because they kind of have a little bit to do with one another. So the first one says, now that you cleared up what happened during the 17 days, what about what happened after? We know that from Team Family's side, Tyrese's death happens, and what we don't know was from Beth's side. What do you think happened after the missing 17 days? Sorry. Okay, and then we have, can you explain the weirdness of the flash sequence from the intro opening of the flagship show from season 5 to 8? Okay. So let me start by talking about the flash and just what it was. And then the reason that I wanted to answer these together is because at least early on, that flash sequence actually informed what a lot of people thought would happen after, when Team Family left with Noah and left the state, what might have happened with Beth afterward at Grady. Okay, so for those who are not aware, starting from season 5, there was a really, really fast flash sequence at the beginning of the opening credits introduction thing. That flash, you had to really slow it down in order to see it. So this is not the kind of thing I would have picked up because I've told you before, I'm not really good at the visual stuff. I'm not as good at the colors and the shapes and the background images. So other people picked this up and I got it from them. But it looks like Beth running. It looks like Emily, her body structure running. You can see the blonde hair. And she's running wearing her yellow polo. Now, there are other people running around her. Some of them are wearing scrubs, which does invoke Grady. People have wondered if maybe the person running next to her was Noah. We saw him wearing scrubs too. We didn't really see Dawn or Dr. Edwards wearing scrubs, right? There's also another arm we see. We don't see the person it belongs to. It looks masculine. It looks like they're wearing a black shirt. And people have said it looks like Daryl's arm. And I actually agree. I mean, we don't know that for sure. It could be anybody. But it does kind of look like Norman's arm. Now, the thing about this is that we never actually saw this in the show. We saw Beth and Daryl running together in Inmates when they were trying to get away from the walkers, but she was not wearing her white polo then, or her yellow polo, I mean. She was wearing that green tank top, which personally I kind of thought was hideous. Don't come at me for that. I know a lot of people think Beth's clothes are cute. That one in particular, though, to me just kind of looked like a tent, and I didn't think it was terribly flattering, which, it's the apocalypse. You wear whatever you can find. I'm not throwing shade. And she actually did have a lime green one at the beginning of season 4 when they were at the prison that I thought was super cute. But anyway, I'll stop. I'll stop talking about apocalyptic fashion senses now. The point is, we didn't see her running in her yellow polo, so that is not something we saw in the show. And if it is Daryl running beside her, we certainly never saw that, right? So you could argue maybe that it's thematic, but because we did see Beth and Noah trying to escape from Grady, and they were both wearing their scrubs. Now, that would not account for the arm with the black shirt or, whether it's Daryl or not. But, you could argue that it was representative of what was happening in season 5, which was her trying to escape from Grady. And if it was just that, then it makes sense, and it's not a TD thing that shows she's coming back, right? Well, again, you could argue that, but that would not be my argument. First of all, there is the fact that you have this other person, the fact that you didn't see it. And then there's something interesting that was said, or it was something that was posted on social media by the main Walking Dead accounts. It was a picture of her when she and Noah were trying to escape, and they went down the elevator shaft, and you can see that she's hanging from the rope they made from the sheets, right, to lower her down, and she's looking through the doors of the elevator shaft, and it says, "First escape attempt." Now, the reason that was interesting is because instead of just saying escape attempt, it said first escape attempt. I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time speaking. Which suggests that there would be a second escape attempt, right? And we never actually saw one. So basically, back in the day, what people were thinking about the yellow flash is that maybe it represented something that was going to happen after the missing 17 days, which goes back to the second ask that I am combining here, that she would try to escape from Grady again, and we just didn't see it. We don't know that for sure, but that's what a lot of people thought. Now, before I go into that anymore, let's go back to the Flash again. It's also really interesting to me that they kept it on the opening credits for so long. So if they had only had it on season 5 and specifically 5A until she was shot, then it would make more sense to me to say it just represented what was going on with her in 5A, and then they took it out because she was no longer in the show. You know, even to me, that wouldn't necessarily mean that she's not coming back. It just that this was specifically representative of what was going on in the show during those 8 episodes with her arc, right? But they didn't do that. They kept it on there for essentially 4 seasons, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, they didn't change it until they completely changed the opening credits to the ones that start with the crows and the tree and the plate glass windows, right? So that's interesting that they kept it on there for so long, as if to say that that arc was still relevant for that long. Now, when they changed the opening credits, a lot of us wanted to believe that it was because the arc where she was gone was over and we were going to see her. Now, obviously, that didn't happen in season 9. It still hasn't happened. But I still think that it's very purposeful that they kept it on for that long. We don't know why. You know, it's something that Gimple would have to come out and tell us, but I'm wondering if maybe it's because chronologically in the narrative, that's when Grady actually went down. So we had this thing where Nicotero said the really suspicious thing about how he thought all the Gradians, the Grady bunch, was dead now. So here's the thing. A lot of people made the point, and not even just us, not even just TDers, they made the point that in terms of the precedent, Rick's group doesn't ever leave a place unless it's uninhabitable, right? Every place they leave has either burned down, been bulldozed, been overrun by walkers to where they cannot stay there and survive. And that's when they leave. But they left Grady standing, okay? So that is exactly why there's a lot of viewers outside of TDers, people who don't believe Beth is coming back, who still feel like there's an open thread there because we never saw what happened to Grady, okay? So the person who asked Nicotero that, you know, what happened to the people at Grady, was probably not even a TDer. You know, it was probably just someone who genuinely was going, well, they left that place standing. Are we going to see it again? What happened to those people? You know, even the general audience picks up on the fact that they did not close that thread and is wondering about it. Okay, so I'm wondering if maybe when they took the flash out of the opening credits was when Grady actually went down. But it's not something we see. It's something very subtle. You know, Rick and Daryl and Team Family are not aware of it because it's not happening where they're at. But it's exactly the kind of thing that Gimple would do. So I have no idea if that's why they took it out, but that's kind of my theory about it. So that's what the flash is. It represents, I think, Beth's escape from Grady, and obviously we didn't really see her escape from Grady. I mean, she left because they took her, but, you know, I wouldn't call being dead and being carried out as a dead body an escape from this place, right? But we believe a lot of people, so this kind of goes into what we think happened after the 17 days. There are a lot of people that believe that she ended up back at Grady. And I have mentioned this before. If somebody else, an outside person, maybe Morgan, maybe someone else, found her in the car, and if they knew about the hospital, they would have taken her somewhere to get medical treatment, right? So a couple of things that we can tie this into. Number one, people have pointed out that in Clear, which was episode 310 or 312, maybe it was 312. It's the episode where Michonne and Carl and Rick go and find Morgan in the little town, and he's in his cray-cray mindset, right? He had gurneys, and he was tying things to them, like in some cases tying walkers to them, in other cases tying, you know, stakes to them to keep the walkers away. And people are going, why does he have a gurney? Like it's just kind of an odd detail for him to have a gurney. So people have suggested that maybe he knows about Grady. Maybe he knows there's a functioning hospital somewhere close to him. And then it would make sense that if he picked up Beth, he didn't know who she was. He didn't know she was tied to Rick's group. He wouldn't have any idea about anything like that. Maybe he knew there was a functioning hospital and took her back there to get treatment. It's possible. Just completely a theory. We don't know if that's how it will play out, but it's possible. The other thing is that this past episode of Fear the Walking Dead, I talked about this a little bit in my video, featured a young woman who was shot, in her case, not in the head, she was shot in the abdomen, and she showed up in a car, in a truck, that had a bullet hole in the window, and they had to take her somewhere to get her medical treatment. In that case, it was to the sanctuary. But in Beth's case, it probably would have been back to Grady. And I have talked about, too, before how I think there was a little bit of a template for this with Glenn and Maggie in Inmates, because she thought he left on the bus, and she went to the bus, tried to find him. He wasn't on the bus. And when he wasn't, she assumed that he would be out there somewhere, but really he was back where they had originally been at the prison. So the same thing could be true of Beth. Team Family is assuming she's out there wandering as a walker somewhere when really she's back at Grady. So these all just, feed into the theory of what might have happened after those missing 17 days and that she might have gone back to Grady. And then with the Flash being present, a lot of people have suggested that maybe she either tries to escape from Grady again, or, it is going to be a matter of Team Family not completely leaving Grady until it actually goes down, but it will be Beth that's there when it goes down. So she's still a member of Team Family, so it would kind of fulfill the pattern that they've established, but it'll just be her instead of the rest of the group. And eventually Grady will go down. There's also a lot of conjecture that she could become a leader at Grady. She could take Dawn's place. I actually think that that's very possible. There was some foreshadowing for that, right? When Dawn said that Beth reminded her a lot of herself when she was young, I almost felt like that was a foreshadow of her becoming like Dawn. And I don't mean in a bad way that she's going to become this evil villain or anything. She would be a foil to Dawn in that she would be a much better leader than Dawn ever was. But it kind of suggests that she might take Dawn's place as a leader. There was also, what did Gorman say that was really on the nose? He said, he was talking about Dawn, but he said to Edward something about someday there's going to be someone in charge here who's not her. And Beth was standing behind Edwards when Gorman said that. So it does kind of suggest that Beth will become a leader at Grady. So I don't know. I guess the most streamlined way to put it would be, if I'm looking at the evidence and assuming that I'm interpreting it right, which, of course I may not be. This is all conjecture. Maybe she gets taken back to Grady. If it was Morgan, I don't think he would stay there. I think he would drop her off and say, I found this person. She needs medical attention. Of course, Edwards, who's still there, would recognize her and know exactly who she is and give her medical attention. Then we have this line from Rick in Them, which is episode 510, where he says it's been 3 weeks since Atlanta. And just, like a day after that, by their time, the music box wakes up. And there's a parallel between Rick and Beth there, because back at the beginning of the series, somebody asked one of the showrunners, how long was Rick in his coma before he woke up? In the show, it doesn't really tell us how long he was in the coma. We see him get shot. We see Shane visiting him, and then he wakes up, and people said, how long was it? And they told us it was 3 weeks. 3 weeks, and the world fell apart while he was in his coma. So it's been 3 weeks since Atlanta, and then the music box wakes up, which obviously symbolizes Beth waking up. So I would say that the most obvious thing that we can kind of glean from the symbolism, and it may be different than this again, but is that she was taken back to Grady. She was there. Team Family did not know that. They were looking for her to put her down, thinking she's a walker, but they did not find her. And that is why Daryl looks at the blonde girl on the tree. But eventually, Rick put his foot down and said, we have to keep going. We cannot keep looking for her forever. And that's why Daryl was pissed at him at the beginning of season 5, because things happened. Meanwhile, she was taken back to Grady, was in a coma there for 3 weeks, and then woke up. She may have become a leader at Grady. It eventually may have gone down. That might have been her gateway into the CRM, because I believe the people Dawn was talking to, who she believed were going to come save them, was the CRM. So that may have been how Beth first, interacts with the CRM. Maybe she goes into the organization for a while. I don't know. From there, anything could happen, right? Does she run away from Grady? Does she run away from the CRM? Is she taken into the CRM for a while and then escapes from them? We do know that once they take people in, it's really hard to escape. If anybody could escape them, it would be Rick, and he's having a hard time getting away from them. That says a lot. We don't really know, but that's kind of what most theories that I've seen revolve around. And again, it's just stuff that we've gleaned from what they have told us and really reading into things and paying attention to the details. But that doesn't take into account a lot of things. It doesn't take into account all of the missing footage. It doesn't take into account the Sasha-Tyrese theory, what was going on with Sasha. Why was Daryl so pissed at Sasha when Tyrese died? There's a lot of things that are unaccounted for, so I'm sure that what I just said it's not the end-all, be-all of what happened, even if it is correct, and it may not be correct. But that's what I can tell you people have conjectured about. Long-term, I kind of talked about this with the Daryl Dixon spinoff, and especially with, oh geez, what was her name? The French gal that was running the school with all the kids. So for me, I've always thought of it as Beth being in the CRM for a time and maybe escaping from them. And I mean, you could argue that maybe that's what the whole Flash was about too. Because even as early as 401 in Beth's cell, there's a theme about imprisonment. Like, you have the birdcage in her cell, you have the no exit sign, which really honestly could be pointing at the CRM and the fact that when you go into the CRM, there's no exit. You can't get away. And this, if that's the case, you guys, this is something the CRM and Beth, her arc leading into the CRM has been planned since at least season 4. Okay, so you got to understand that. It's been a long time they've been planning for this storyline. But then in season 5, we see this flash of her running in yellow, and maybe that's to show that she will escape the CRM. So the other thing you could say, I said maybe that was, when they took the flash off, that's when Grady went down, or maybe she ends up being, the CRM does show up, does absorb everyone who's at Grady, and so she ends up inside the CRM. They take her from there, and maybe that shows chronologically in the narrative when she escaped from Grady, because I think when she escaped from the CRM, because I think it's possible that she's inside the CRM for a while and then escapes. And so when we actually come to meet her, she's no longer inside the CRM, but she was. And I can see her setting up something like that French school where she takes in strays and kids and orphans and raises them and creates her own little army of mini Daryls and things like that. That's kind of what we've always thought she would be doing when we see her again, but I do believe that at some point she was inside the CRM. And, again, I could be wrong. Maybe she will still be in the CRM when we see her. Maybe it'll just look a little different than that. This is all just conjecture. So this is the kind of thing that we've always thought would happen, but it is very much headcanon and no way to prove that's what it's going to be. It might look very, very different from that. I'm just kind of giving you the things that we've always thought about and discussed and that I've seen a lot of people have theories about. So I hope that answers your questions. I kind of rambled a little bit on that, but that is what the yellow flash from season 5 through 8 was. And it has informed what we think might have happened after the missing 17 days. But again, all just theories. So I'm going to cut it off there and let me know what you think of those theories in the comments. And I'll see you guys tomorrow.